Welcome to the Wargamer. I'm your host Rob, and it's a really exciting day because we have just had the Ironjawz Battletome supplement been released by Games Workshop, and I'm going to cover it all in this video right now. I'm going to go through all of the units and talk about it more. If you would like an entire deep dive on the Ironjawz faction, I'm going to do that over the next couple of days, including all of these new units, which is going to be really, really fun. So let's not beat around the bush and let's get straight into it. The first thing we want to talk about is what the hell am I talking about? On the Warhammer community website, Ironjawz, so from the Orruk war clans, have got a supplement, and you can see it here, Battletome supplement Ironjawz, and they tell you exactly what it means, so I'm going to read that out to you so you can go through it. The war scrolls in this supplement are considered to be part of Battletome Orruk war clans, and each has the Ironjawz keyword. If you have an Orruk war clans army that is either an Ironjawz army or a big war army, you can include any of these units in this supplement in that army. And to follow up from that, Orruk Ardboys, which is a miniature range that already exists, the Orruk Ardboys war scroll on page 26 of this supplement replaces the Orruk Ardboys war scroll in Battletome Orruk War Clans, which is where you find Ironjawz stuff. In addition, the pitch battle profile in this book replaces the one in that. Okay, super simple. There is something that we should add to this, though, and that is the Dawnbringer book. So on Saturday, I'm recording this on Tuesday, but that's when it's going to come out, we are going to get the new Dawnbringers book, so Dawnbringers book 2, and that's going to have an army of renown. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go and watch my last video, but an army of renown is effectively it's kind of its own little battle tome. It's a very select little section of a book, in this case Orruk War Clans, and you're going to get grand strategies, battle tactics, and enhancements, things like command traits and artifacts in that army of renown. And as stated in the Warhammer community article, Dawnbringers Book 2, Reign of the Brute, also provides rules for Grunter Stampede, an entire army of renown that revolves around the Hogs of War, both big and small, with a buffet of unique enhancements and allegiance abilities. Righteous Chance, so there we go. And there's going to be some special rules. So, if you do want to play with these new minis, you're going to need this free PDF. You're going to need probably the original Ironjawz book, and also you're going to need the Dawnbringers book. But if you only want to get into using the big pigs and the units that are featured in this update, and the new minis are on pre-order as well, then you probably can just get the Dawnbringers book and just play like that. So, kind of interesting. It's very insular. Reminds me a lot of War Scroll battalions that they used to do, where it's like, you only need this, you only need these couple of units, off you go. I'd love to know what you think. First opportunity, call to action, boop, 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 for you to tell me what you think in the comments below. So let me know what you think. Right, let's go look at these units. The first unit we're going to look at is the TskBoss on Mawgrunta. Now, for years, Ironjawz players have said we love mega bosses and we love gore grunters. We'd love a mega boss on a gore grunter. And Games Workshop were like, we've heard you. We know exactly what you want. This is going to be a TskBoss on a Mawgrunta. So not a mega boss on a gore grunter, which is a little bit confusing. So it's important to know what keywords you're going to see at the bottom here. Destruction, War Clans, Ironjawz, Hero, and it's a monster, which means it is going to get through monstrous actions, and it's got its own unique monstrous action. Mawgrunta and a TskBoss. So let's take a look at it. It's 380 points, which is pretty expensive, and it kind of plays like a Stonehorn does for Beastcore Raiders. It's got 14 wounds with a 3-up armor save, which is really tanky. That's good. It's good armor save means if you do all-out defense or a Mystic Shield or anything like that, it's going to be very, very tanky. It moves 9 inches, which can improve, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And it's Bravery 8. And Bravery 8 is actually quite nice because you want to do Heroic Recovery, which is a heroic action, so it's going to be able to heal a little bit. One of the few sources of healing in the book. Obviously, you've got the fixing beat as well, which is important. In combat, it's got a lot of attacks. Now, everything that I read out for these units, you have to remember that Ironjawz have access to War Chanter, which is a character which lets you apply +1 damage to all of the melee weapons to a unit in an Ironjawz army. You can also take multiple War Chanters. It's kind of not unique, and you can do the buff multiple times. So if you were to have the TskBoss or Mawgrunta and also a unit of Gore Grunters, as long as you've got 2 War Chanters in a range, you can have +1 damage to all their melee weapons, which is really, really good. So he's got 6 attacks, which are 3s and 3s, but that can go up to damage 3. It's damage 2 initially. And then he's got some other attack profiles. I won't talk about that much, other than he does quite a bit of damage, which is quite nice, which is really fun. He's obviously mounted, and he does have a little crew of Ardboys on the side that you can see there. And his special rule, or the rule that's important to him, is Head of the Stampede. If this unit makes a charge move, you can reroll charge rolls for all friendly Mawgrunters units on the battlefield until the end of the phase. So not Gorgrunters. So even though it is a big pig, and we do love big pigs, this big pig doesn't interact with the older big pigs, so the Gorgrunters, only the new big pigs, the Mawgrunters. And then he's got a very wordy couple of rules that we need to talk about. Okay, he's got unstoppable momentum, and you can see on his chart that he has a momentum score. Starts at 1, goes up to 6. This unit has a movement score that affects the value represented by the dash, so the numbers there, for this unit as shown on the momentum table above. At the start of the battle, this unit has a momentum score of 1. Easy peasy. Each time this unit finishes a run or a charge, add D3 to your momentum score. This unit's momentum score can never exceed 6. At the end of each turn, subtract 1 from this unit's momentum score to a minimum of 1. Okay, so currently that just tells you how to generate momentum score. If you do a charge, or if you do a run, then add D3 to that momentum score. So you should on average do 2. So after your first run or your first charge, you should be on a momentum score of 3. Then you got another rule that keys in with it called Headlong Charger. While this unit has a momentum score of 4 or more, this unit can charge even if it ran earlier in the same turn. So if you wanted to be a little bit cheeky on the first turn, you could try a run and charge. And then if you manage to roll big on the D3 and get the 4, because it needs to be a minimum of 4, you could do a run and charge. So it's a little bit slowed down, really. But don't forget, this is also an Ironjawz army. Ironjawz have access to a command ability called Mighty Destroyers. And as long as you're not within 12 inches of an enemy, you get to make a hero phase move. So this unit can already move 18 inches. Base movement 9, so Mighty Destroyers 9, and then move another 9. Okay, so 18 inches. So this kind of run and charge thing isn't actually that important for this unit, which is the thing. The thing that's going to be a little bit annoying about this unit is keeping track of your momentum score for the pig. May I suggest some small bacon-like tokens? And then he's got an ability called Hack and Charge. You can carry out the Carve a Path Monstrous Rampage ability instead of any other Monstrous Rampages. Okay, so let's talk about the Monstrous Rampage. So Monstrous Rampage is something that happens at the beginning of the combat phase. There are some really good ones like Roar and Stomp, but they have a unique one. And it's Carve a Path. You pick an enemy unit with a wounds characteristic of 4 or less, and that's within 3 inches, so you're in combat with them. So start the combat phase, I'm in combat with someone, they've got 4 wounds or less, easy. And roll a dice. If the roll is less than this unit's momentum score, that enemy unit suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the roll. And you can immediately attempt to charge with this unit. When a unit charges in this manner, it can pass across enemy units with a wounds characteristic of 1 or 2 in the same manner as a unit that can fly. So, what's happening? You charge in, you get into combat, you do this monstrous action, and then you can basically fly over a screen, which will also add to your momentum, if that makes sense. So you charge in, you'll build up some momentum from doing that, and then you'll be able to charge over that screen and then do a ton of damage to something behind, which is kind of interesting. End of the charge phase, thank you, yeah. Sorry, monstrous action is done at the end of the charge phase, not at the beginning of the combat phase. That's important. So big charging unit, goes in, stomps, well, not doesn't stomp specifically, does this action, and then charges over. 380 points for that. The only thing he really brings to the army, obviously, is that he gives reroll charges to more grunters, which is kind of interesting, I guess. I'd love to know what you all think about this particular guy. It feels like he's kind of a missile. Now, you already can have a very fast Maw Crusher, but a Maw Crusher is on a huge base, 160 mil base. So fitting him into the right place is quite hard with an Ironjawz army. This guy's a little bit more of a pork missile, you know, a bacon bomb. Anyway, 380 points. Very interesting. Wonder what you think. The next unit is the Divine Swine, the Mawgrunta with Hacking Crew. So this is the non-hero version of the model we just talked about. It's still a monster, and it still has the same monstrous rampage. It still generates momentum, like it did previously, and it still has got the ability to run and charge thanks to the headlong charger. And it's got a good melee profile. Its weakness is that it's a 4-up armor save and that it's 280 points. So for me, it's probably the weakest of the three of the big pigs from Big Pig Dojo. It's not terrible, but and it's got, again, like a good profile, but I think I prefer the next one. So we're going to go talk about that. For 180 points, you can get a Mawgrunta Gorgers. Now, these guys can be battle line if you have the TskBoss be your general. That means you can reinforce them twice, meaning you can have a unit of up to 3, which is pretty cool because they gain the battle line keyword, which means you can have a unit of 3 monsters, which is honestly legit. They've got 12 wounds and a 4-up armor save, which for 180 points is honestly really, really fine, especially for a monster. And they've got a good combat profile as well, not as good as obviously the previous two, but they cost a lot less. They still have that same ability to generate momentum, which means you can get that run and charge. But with Mighty Destroyers, that seems superfluous and isn't really important. But the bit that's amazing is their unique monstrous action, flattened into the mud. This is absolutely a reason that if you are running an Ironjawz army and you don't want to add much from the new release, this would be my pick. Flattened into the mud is only a model in a unit that has made a charge move this turn can carry out the monstrous rampage. So you have to have charged with this unit. Pick an enemy unit with a wounds characteristic of 1 or 2 within 3 inches of this unit and roll a dice. If that roll is less than this unit's momentum score, the strike last effect applies to that enemy unit until the end of the turn. This is really, really important because Ironjawz have got an ability called smashing and bashing, where if a unit of Ironjawz wipes out a unit in combat, they get to immediately activate another unit. It's called chain activation. What's really fun about making a unit strike last is it means that you can kind of manipulate which units you're going to strike with. So even if you do not activate smashing and bashing, you then can kind of restart the chain thanks to making a unit strike last. That's very cool. And if you don't want to do that, like if you would just like to stomp a unit so they can't take a command ability, or roar a unit because they don't want to use a command ability, or if you want to smash a piece of enemy terrain down, and you don't want to spend all of those points on a Mega Boss or Maw Crusher, it feels like the Mawgrunta Gorgers are really good, especially as if you could have them just as like a kind of, if they can be battle line, you could just have 2 of those as battle line if you wanted to. But it feels like if you are going to do that, you're probably going to run the Army of Renown because your general won't be able to take any of the command traits and artifacts that are in the Ironjawz book because they don't have the Mega Boss keyword. So this feels like a release that kind of works a little bit with the main book, but works much better on its own in its Army of Renown, which will be in the Dawnbringers book. Anyway, this is my hot pick. Definitely would get one of these. The new Ardboys War Scroll is actually quite exciting. It's 220 points, and importantly, they now come in units of 10. This is actually going to be a really big shake-up to lots of different people's armies, specifically to Big War armies, because Big War previously would fill their battle line out by just having small units of 5 Ardboys that only cost like 80 or 90 points. Now that you have to spend 220 points for 10 Ardboys, that's going to really change how some of those armies are built. Ardboys are very similar to Chaos Warriors. If you think about Chaos Warriors as being the defensive build of a 10-person unit, then Ardboys are the offensive build of a 10-person unit. They've got a 3-up armor save, which is absolutely exactly what you want from a 10-person unit, with a wounds characteristic of 2, but a very low bravery of 5. Importantly, if you have a standard bearer in the unit, you're going to add +1 to their bravery, but these guys are going to be very susceptible to battle shocking off what is high-value models now. They move 4 inches. This has always been their weakness. They're very slow, but as we know previously, and I've talked about a lot with Mighty Destroyers, these guys are going to be able to move in the hero phase. They're going to be able to move 8 inches in total. That doesn't include, obviously, running. Now, their attack profile, they now have got 2 different weapon profiles, and you have to be fully equipped with either all choppers or all Ardboy stickers. These models are on 32mm bases, so when you do have them on, when you are using the Ardboy choppers, their 1-inch range means that you might not be able to fight with some of those models because they'll be out of range. The Ardboy stickers are 2-inch range, so you'll be able to fight with loads. So if you are going to take a massive unit of these, then you might want to go with the Ardboy stickers. The choppers and stickers, there's a good conversation to have about which one you're going to want to arm these guys with if you buy the box. The choppers, I think, ultimately probably end up being better because you get 2 attacks each that hit on 3s and wound on 3s and then rend 1, damage 1. But thanks to the special rule, here we go, you get to add 1 to the attacks characteristic of that unit in the same turn that you made a charge. Also, as we know, with the War Chanter buff, you can add +1 damage to those. So that means from a unit of Orruk Ardboys, you're going to be able to get 30 attacks, +1 for the champion, so 31, that are 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2. Obviously, you can give all-out attacks, so it's going to be 2s, and there's a spell that's inside the Ardboys book, sorry, not the Ardboys book, the Ironjawz book, which isn't often seen very much, but it's actually pretty good. It's an AoE, so everyone, an area of effect spell from the caster, and with Primal Dice, this is going to become a lot better, because you're going to be able to cast it, because it's cast on an 8, so it's quite hard to cast, but that's going to give everyone in 15 inches +1 to wound, and that's amazing for foot slogging Ardboy lists. So you can give multiple +1 to hits out from a mega boss. So you could be like +1 to hit, +1 to hit, +1 to hit, and everyone is +1 to wound, which is pretty good. So you can have a ton of Ardboys doing a ton of attacks. If you want to go the other way, instead, you can have Ardboy stickers, using them more of a screen, but they do hit on 4s with only 2 attacks each. But if they're charged, they can, when they attack back the unit that charged them, they're going to be rend 2. But they could still be damage 2, obviously. They could also be +1 hit, +1 to wound. So your perfect kind of situation is that you're going to have 2 attacks, 3s and 2s, rend 2, damage 2. But with Hoarfrost available, you could actually just stick that on the Ardboy choppers, which is kind of fun. Now, they do have one other ability, and that is the Shield Bash. Each time this unit fights, after all of its attacks have been resolved, pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit and roll a dice for each model in this unit within 1 inch of that unit. So you need to be within 1 inch of the enemy unit, and each model needs to be within 1 inch of the enemy. And you roll a dice for each model that is. So let's say you've got a unit of 10, and only 8 of them are within 1 inch of the enemy unit. You roll 8 dice, any 6s are a mortal wound. We're about to talk about a character in a minute that is going to make it so that you can do that on 5s, the Ardboy boss. So we'll talk about him in a second. And when we talk about Anvil Smasher, I should add in that all of those attacks that you do, you could make it so that any 6s to hit are going to do a mortal wound. 220 points is quite a lot, but you could build some real interesting lists now, I think. A unit of 20 Ardboys is pretty scary. You could do a lot of attacks, you could be very defensive, and you could really cause your opponent some issues. So I quite like the Ardboys at this point, especially maybe in units of 10 that fly off and go and do some damage here and there. We'll see. We'll see. I'm interested in what the math is on this. I've only just read this. It only came out like 30 minutes ago. But I think this is really, really good. I think they've had a good glow up, but I can absolutely understand the frustration of players that have been playing Big War because they've lost that minimal battle line unit. So I'd like to know what you think. So one of the characters also released in this set is the Ardboy Big Boss. 6 wounds with 3-up save, nice and survivable, obviously below the wound cap, so won't be able to target them with missile weapons outside of 12 inches, thanks to Lookout Sir. It's okay in a fight, 5 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2, but that's not really the reason you ever take one of these characters. But the fact that they're not bad in a fight is actually a bonus, and he's only 100 points, which is great. Huge and great. We really like that as well. And he's got an ability called Iron Fisted Commander. This unit can issue the rally command up to 2 times in the same phase, and if it does so, each command must be received by friendly Ardboys units. No command point is spent the second time this unit issues the command. And in addition, when you rally friendly Ardboy units, you rally them on 5s instead of 6s. So are you looking to run loads and loads of Ardboys? Now you've got multiple rallies on a 5+, which is not bad for 100 points, especially when you add in the get bashing additional thing, which is an ability. And that is add 1 to the shield bash rolls made for friendly Ardboys units while they're wholly within 12 inches of any friendly units with this ability. So now we've got Ardboys that are rallying on 5s, and now those Ardboys are also, on top of the damage I was talking about earlier with the mortal wounds and all of the attacks, they're now also going to be doing shield bashing at the end of combat, or the end of when they activate, and doing more mortal wounds. So those Ardboys are going to start doing quite a lot of damage in different sections of the turn, which is quite interesting. I think the Ardboy Big Boss is a great model. I think you could build Ardboy lists. That's pretty great. And if we talk about Zogrokk, he definitely is going to add to that. Zogrokk, Anvil Smasher, is a unique leader and hero, so he's a hero character. and it costs 160 points. He's got 7 wounds, a 3-up armor save, which is great, very survivable, and he's pretty good in a fight depending on what you choose. We should talk about that right now, because what he chooses is quite important. When you do choose Anvil Smasher, he's either armed with a Skull Crushing Basher and one of the... he's always armed with that, and he's either got a Ward Smashing Chopper or Grunter Tongs. And that's actually really, really important. Let's talk about the Ward Smashing Chopper first. That is a 2-attack weapon. 3s and 3s, Rend 2, damage 3. So 2 attacks only. That's really important to remember. And the Ward Smashing Chopper's got a special rule. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with this unit's Ward Smashing Chopper is a 6, and the target has any wards, that unit's wards are smashed. If a unit's wards are smashed for the rest of the battle, ward rolls cannot be made for that unit. Now that sounds kind of like amazing. Wow, turn off a unit's wards for the rest of the time. And absolutely people are going to try and put this in their list and they're going to do it. But from a consistency perspective, it's only 2 attacks. So the chances that you finally get this movement 4 character into the right place, and movement 4 is always a little bit disingenuous when you're talking about Ironjawz, thanks to Mighty Destroyers, the ability to do a 3d6 charge thanks to War Chanter beats, so you can always have very fast Ironjawz units. But once you finally get there and you get into the biggest bad guy like a Nagash or an Archeon, and you're like, I am going to smash your wards, and you roll your 2 attacks, you don't roll a 6. So, but it does feel like a really fun game. Feels like you could make yourself a battle journal of all of the ward saves that you've smashed with Zogrokk over the course of time. I'm here for stuff like that. So absolutely brilliant. Thank you to JoJo's pointing out that it's 3s and 2s on the Ward Smashing Chopper. It doesn't really matter what damage it does. You're not taking it for that. You're taking it for the wards. Now, if you don't take him with the Ward Smashing Chopper and instead you take him with the Grunter Tongs, I think that's got a little bit more play. If you do have the Grunter Tongs, in your hero phase, you can pick one for any Ironjawz unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit and roll a dice. You add 2 to the roll of this unit if it's armed with the Grunter Tongs. On a 4+, that unit's weapons are green hot until the starting next hero phase. But obviously, if you're using Grunter Tongs, it's going to be on a 2+. So pick an Ironjawz unit within 12 inches, which is great. So a unit of Ardboys or a unit of Gore Grunters are probably your 2 options. But maybe Brutes. While a unit's weapons are green hot, unmodified hit rolls of a 6 made with this melee weapon by that unit cause 1 mortal wound in addition to any damage they inflict, which is great. So now I take Zogrokk Anvil Smasher, take a unit of 10 Ardboys, they charge in, they're going to do 30 attacks, any 6s to hit are going to cause a mortal wound. Shield Bash, thanks to the Ardboy boss, I'm doing some real mortal wound damage. That feels like that's a little bit more functional, and I think Zogorokk's going to be really good. He's also going to be able to buff up Gore Grunters, who will do exactly the same thing. They've got a lot of attacks. You're going to get something like 22 attacks at a unit of 3 Gore Grunters, so that scales quite nicely as well. So it's fun. I quite like that. So tongues are really good, especially as this is going to be on a 2+ to do this. So I really like Zogrokk Anvil Smasher. I think the mini's great. 160 points is fine. And I think, yeah, you could definitely build some more output into your list from Zogrokk. So he's quite cool. For 100 points, you can get a unit of 3 Brute Ragerz. They're 3 wounds each, but they have a disappointing 5-up save. That's real weak sauce. I've got the hiccups, I'm sorry. They move 4 inches, and they got Bravery 7. Okay, so it's a unit of 3, okay? And 5-up save. Basically, 5-up save makes him dead on arrival. But maybe you could use him as a counter-charge unit. Let's talk about it. Each model in a Brute Ragerz unit is armed with one of the following weapon options: Chain Smasher, Mighty Gore Hacker, or a Brute Crusher. Right? Or a Brute Crusher. And they're all very, very different. The Chain Smasher's got 6 attacks at 2-inch range, but it's a disappointing 4s and 4s. So, but it's Rend 1 and damage 2. So you will have 18 attacks, and with a War Chanter butt, that are damage 3. Okay? Right? That are damage 3. So 18 attacks, damage 3 is, for 100 points, is crazy. Like, honestly, legitimately crazy. So you might just have them as like a very small little unit that you hide in a corner, and then, or behind a screen, then they charge out. That's a lot of attacks. Okay, that's That's all I'm going to say. The Brute Crusher is another option, and that's only 3 attacks. However, with the Bone Crunching Strike, if an unmodified hit roll for an attack made with the Brute Crusher is a 6, it causes 3 mortal wounds. A unit of 3 with 3 attacks each is going to be 9 attacks. So that does mean you're going to do 9 mortal wounds. I'm absolutely not going to edit the hiccups out. It's fine. I think it's funny. Anyway, it's going to be 9 mortal wounds. Okay, 9 mortal wounds. So that, again, you can't really, like 9 mortal wounds is not nothing. Like, sorry, it's not 9 mortal wounds. Sorry, that's not true at all. It's 6 mortal wounds, roughly. Like, it becomes 9 mortal wounds if you take a unit of 6, which is 200 points. So you can get a really kind of interesting countercharge unit from the Brute Ragerz. But like my hiccups, they're kind of annoyingly in the way, and I don't know if I want them to stay. So I'm not 100% on these. But they have a lot of output, and you can't ignore that. They just don't have a lot of survivability, which is a problem. I should also add to that unit that they also get to run and still charge. So these guys are going to be quite fast in a counter charge role. They're going to be very good because you Mighty Destroys them 4, move 4, use a command point to make it so you move 6. So you've got basically a 14-inch move and then a charge. It's a great counter punch unit. Each, that's a unit of 9 wounds, a total of 9 wounds for 125 points. But they still have a 5-up armor save. A good thing, though, is that if you are in combat within 3 inches of enemy units, you will get a 5-up ward save, so a little bit more survivable than their brothers. They're an elite unit as well, so they can issue commands to themselves, and they've got a couple of special rules. But their attack profile is quite interesting. It's 6 attacks per model, and they are damage 2, but they're 4s and 4s. They hit on 4s, they wound on 4s, and they're red 1. But if you were to use a War Chanter buff, so they're damage 3, and if you're also to, cast Hoarfrost on them, you've got an incredibly interesting unit for 125 points. 18 attacks, 4s and 4s, rend 3, damage 3. Problem is the 4s and 4s. Even at the best, they can get +1 to hit and +1 to wound, and that is going to be, this hiccup I think is a war trying to get out of my chest. I think that's what it is. You still aren't going to hit and wound much. So I still think they're a kind of okay countercharge unit, right? They've got a couple of special abilities as well. They've got Green Rage. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made by this unit is a 6, and the target unit has got 10 or more models, then you make 2 hits instead of 1. So they're going to be very, very good at clearing out hordes of enemy, which I think is quite interesting as well. But hitting on 4s is still bad. And then they've got Berserkers. I suppose if you do Hoarfrost, so they hit on 2s, do it the other way round, these guys could be incredible, actually. Yeah, do Hoarfrost so they hit on 2s. Then 18 attacks, hitting on 2s, do the +1 to wound spell, so they're wounded on 3s, rend 1, damage 3 is going to be nuts output, actually. And then they've got the Berserkers rule. This unit can run and still charge later in the same turn. So like we talked about with the last unit, they've got a 14-inch kind of move and then charge range. Don't forget, obviously also you can do the get and beat, so you're going to be able to charge really fast. That's everything in the review so far. The hiccups are obviously hilarious, so please do obviously mock me in the comments. And if you did like the video, like, subscribe, and please join my Patreon. This is kind of interesting and weird, I'm not going to lie. We're about to get the new book, the new Dawnbringers book, where we're going to get 4 different armies of renown. This release that we've had feels like it was meant to be part of an Ironjawz Battletome. The armies of renown are very much like Crusher Stampede was for 9th edition 40k, where it's a very insular, singular army list or set of models. I also think this is really weird that loads of this doesn't interact with the Ironjawz book. Ironjawz command traits are either they're mega boss based, and there's no mega bosses here. So the Ardboy's not a mega boss. The TskBoss isn't a mega boss. So that's kind of weird. It's really funny doing a wrap up with the hiccups, but I'm doing it anyway. So it feels completely separate. You can mix it in a bit. I don't know. I find I'm kind of weirded out by this release. So I guess hiccups kind of makes sense because that's weird too. And I'd like to know what you think, honestly, like as a community person, because I'm obviously only myself. I do this for work. So you as a person who's like, oh, I've always played Ironjawz, I'm quite excited about this, or I'm really excited about just running the big pigs. I play Big War. I'd love to know what all your thoughts are about this release, especially as we're going to get like a KO army, a Trog army, and we're also going to get, there's another army as well. I forget which one. So we're going to get all these different armies, and that's going to be quite weird because they're all locked, and they're locked behind their own battle tactics and grand strats and everything else. Maybe it'll work out, and it'll be really cool, and it'll be a really easy way to get into playing Age of Sigmar. Oh, I've just bought the Trug herd. I've just bought the other herd. I don't like the big pig ones. I don't know. Either way, we've got big pig rules. Big pigs are coming out soon. Really exciting. Thanks for listening. Let's go. Yeah, I guess these rules just seem a bit Uruk-wood.